Greetings, viewers, and welcome to another episode of Unrepentant Geeking, the show on Channel Awesome not afraid to deploy all the running puns. I mean all of them, so you've been warned. I'm your host, Sean Carterfeld, and on today's episode, I'll be reviewing the so-called winter finales for two of the hottest shows on TV right now, at least as far as the Ultra Geeky set are concerned. Arrow and The Flash. Now, because these two episodes just aired, I'm going to do my best to keep things as spoiler-free as possible, so if I'm somewhat vague at times in the following review, you know why. Still, I'll have to discuss at least some details, so if you're behind in either series and want to go in completely fresh, then I recommend you come back and watch this video after you've caught up. And with that out of the way, on your mark, get set, go!
For a guy who has experienced his fair share of mysteries, one mystery I still can't figure out is why some people come into our lives, why some people go, and others become a part of you.
Nice mask.
We're gonna need the Arrow's help.
Partners?
Partners. We'll help you catch a bad guy.
Metahuman.
I'm not calling him that, Barry.
Man, that's not freaking you out.
The Scarlet Speedster. Any preference on how you'd like to die?
We call him Captain Cold.
We can talk about you giving your enemies silly code names later.
You mean like over coffee with Deathstroke and the Huntress?
Oh, sorry.
You guys remember Felicity?
I'll always remember this. What is that for?
You're gonna run over there, you're gonna come back at me, and you're gonna get hit with an arrow.
No, I'm not.
I truly think he's a hero, fine, but he's not the kind you should be looking up to.
I want that arrow out of my city.
You need to calm down. And you need to hold on.
My money's on experience.
My money's on speed.
Please tell me you're not actually having this conversation right now.
You can train. Climb that stupid bar until your heart explodes. But you'll never be as fast as I am.
By this point, I've stopped watching both Constantine and Gotham, but that's not to say I've given up on either show completely. After all, I know only all too well that it could take time for a series, especially a genre one, to fully figure itself out. There are, of course, all the classic examples that prove this, like Star Trek The Next Generation and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but right now it's two more recent examples that come to mind, namely Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and, of course, CW's Arrow. The latter, not so incidentally, was another show I ended up dropping midway through its first season, but upon hearing things had improved by the end of that first run, I decided to give the show another shot heading into Season 2. And boy am I glad I did, because with its second season, Arrow became a superhero show that I could truly get behind. One with a lead who, while not perfect, was at least trying to step back from simply slaughtering his foes in favor of a better and more heroic path. What followed was a terrific season of TV that built and built until it reached a remarkable climax that saw Oliver Queen winning his greatest test and coming out the other side victorious in ways that went deeper than just winning a brawl. But oh, what brawls there were. Arrow Season 2 even had a time to spend a couple episodes setting up a spin-off featuring one of my favorite DC characters, and I was immensely hyped for both Arrow Season 3 and The Flash Season 1, because they were coming from creators who were clearly no longer ashamed to embrace all the wonderful over-the-top lunacy and colorful operatic elements that are part and parcel of a true superhero story. I was fully expecting The Flash to come out of the gate running. You were warned, as it were, and was equally hopeful for the prospects of Arrow going into a new season with at least one new mask-wearing hero in tow. Sadly, while The Flash has indeed ended up producing every bit of as strong of a debut season as I'd hoped, the same cannot be said regarding Season 3 of Arrow. Despite what should have been a strong hook to drive the season, namely the untimely murder of a major and much beloved supporting character, Arrow to date has struggled to reproduce the same sense of momentum that Season 2 generated. As a result, while individual episodes of Arrow this year have still been entertaining and engaging, the larger overall storyline that in theory at least should be driving everything has remained amorphous and surprisingly undercooked. Not helping things are a flashback storyline this year that to date has felt somewhat middling and rote, plus some particularly inexplicable decisions from our titular lead regarding the treatment of an old and very dangerous foe. The Flash, meanwhile, has done a terrific job of establishing its leads in their world, while also presenting episodes that can both stand on their own and serve as the building blocks for the season as a whole. While not every element of the series is completely worked out of the gate, Iris, The show, for the most part, has felt like it's on the right track, with an overarching storyline that included enough teases and hints to promise even greater days to come. And yet, with their so-called winter finales, each series, oddly enough, has ended up feeling like they reversed positions. With Arrow's finale featuring developments that helped bring the larger story into proper focus at last, while building up to one hell of a ballsy cliffhanger. Do I expect said cliffhanger to stick permanently? Not for a second, regardless of the teasing a certain lead actor may be engaging in via social media, but it's one I could see the rest of the season having to deal with the aftermath of all the same. In point of fact, I rather like the idea of this development keeping our hero away from his city and friends for 4 or 5 episodes, as we watch both his recovery and the way those he left behind struggle to fill the hole created by his absence. Also, after a season that's gone out of its way to establish that Oliver is a nigh unbeatable fighter, it's good to have the presence of at least one villain who we now know could simply outright kick Ollie's ass whenever he wants. It gives the series something to build towards in the future, and if the writers are smart, this will be the last time Ollie and you-know-who, and if you don't, then go watch the episode already, fight for at least a season or 2. Ollie's opponent isn't one of the most dangerous villains in the DC universe for nothing, after all, and the uncertainty and doubt even the mere mention of his name could bring out in Ollie going forward would be a perfect sword of Damocles to leave hanging over our hero's head for years to come. While not a perfect episode by any means, the big sibling fight, for example, felt like a rare misstep from a fight team that normally more than justifies its growing reputation for producing some of the best action on TV. Generally, this was a terrific place to leave the audience as we head into a break for the next month or so. The big mystery of the season has been answered, and the reveal of whodunit both made sense, at least in terms of the heightened reality of Arrow, and promises plenty of interesting fallout for the show to explore in the rest of Season 3, and maybe even beyond. Meanwhile, the debut of another beloved DC hero into the shared universe of Arrow and the Flash seems all but inevitable now, and indeed, the man behind the mask in this case would make an excellent temporary lead for Arrow should the writers decide to go that route. Hell, if the CW decides it needs even more DC superhero series to fill its airwaves, and with the massive success of the Flash, this is not all that far-fetched of an idea, might I suggest it already has found both the perfect character and actor to carry that particular flag. Certainly, there would be worse individuals to build a TV series around, and we know the actor in question has both the desire and the chops needed to pull it off. After an at times rough start, Season 3 of Arrow is now hopefully back on track to match or even exceed the standards set by Season 2. With a single episode, the series has managed to leave a multitude of dangling plot threads just begging to be further explored, and I for one can't wait to see where things go from here. Meanwhile, in comparison, The Flash delivered a somewhat muddled winter finale that feels far messier than it needed to be, thanks in large part to it foregoing the careful build-up the show has been engaging up to this point. I want to be clear that by no means did I think this was a bad episode, and visually our first big speed-on-speed fight was every bit as exhilarating to watch as I hoped it would be. I still hear complaints from some people that the CGI in The Flash is too obvious, but I think these individuals simply have unrealistic and unfair expectations. This isn't a $200 million movie production we're talking about after all, and I personally continue to be impressed by how the production team for The Flash produces week in and week out amazing superpowered action off of what is likely at best a mid-level TV budget. I remember when they first teased us with the possibility of Gorilla Grodd back in the pilot, and I thought to myself that a tease would ultimately be all we'd ever get. After all, how could a show on a CW budget ever hope to produce a talking gorilla that wouldn't get them laughed off the screen? However, now about 40% of the way into the season, and I find myself thinking that this show might just be able to pull it off. I actually had a crackpot theory at one point, based on the seeming point of view of a flashback in an early episode, that Grodd might have switched brains or taken over the body of Dr. Wells, and that would explain his odd behavior and the like. And while that could still be a possibility, I now think it's just as likely at some point we will actually see Grodd in all his gorilla glory. I also thought a lot of the character beats worked well in the episode, particularly those involving Barry and his family, adopted or otherwise. Jesse L. Martin continues to prove himself one of this show's 2 not-so-secret weapons, the other being, of course, Tom Cavanaugh. And speaking of secrets, I'm so glad that Iris at last knows about Barry's feelings for her. I still think the sooner she learns his other big secret, the better, but I'll take what I can get for now. And it's never a bad thing to see Barry's father again, especially in a scene that almost manages to make the overly convoluted Barry-Iris relationship feel believable and logical. Almost. The way this series continues to honor the history of its title character in multiple mediums while still boldly forging its own path is no small thing, and it's something the upcoming tide of superhero TV shows would be wise to learn from. So, what then were my problems with the Flash winter finale? Well, as thrilling as it was to finally get the Reverse Flash showing up in a big way, and as successful as the basic execution of the character visually was, I still feel like the actual timing and motivation for his appearance feels a bit, well, rushed. It's something that I wouldn't be surprised to see the series address down the line, but for now, his showing himself before Barry for seemingly no reason doesn't make a lot of sense, and as a result, it undercuts the potential drama. It comes across arbitrary and forced, and the same could be said for the way the episode handles bringing Firestorm into the larger plot, with Flamehead's last-minute save near the end of the episode particularly coming out of nowhere in a bad way. There's no explanation for why and how Ronnie showed up in just the nick of time, and indeed everything else the episode establishes about the character at this point undercuts any potential motivation for his getting involved in the first place. Also, the way the episode handles Ronnie's subplot as a whole feels disjointed, with the discussion between Caitlin and Cisco producing some particularly eye-rolling dialogue that does neither character any favors going forward. And of course, there's the big closing scene, which, for the record, I'm calling shenanigans on. No way is the identity of the Reverse Flash as simple as straightforward as this scene would imply. Or, at least I hope not, because that would be a major letdown in my opinion. It's the obvious reveal, for one thing, and if true, it feels like it undercuts the potential complexity of a character who is far better served by remaining a more ambiguous and uncertain figure. Basically, this episode of The Flash feels like the creators of the show wanted to jump right into whatever big plans they have for the remainder of the season without having to do the work, and that's a bit of a shame. Yet, do I have worries about The Flash in the long term coming off of this winter finale? God, I really hate that term. Not really. The show may have stumbled a bit in this episode, but fortunately, a character like The Flash is practically tailor-made for getting back up after a fall and continuing the race like nothing happened. In just 9 episodes, this series has proven that big and colorful superheroics can work brilliantly via live action on the small screen, and that both the characters and the audience watching can have fun without undercutting the potential for drama. Come the return of the series in the new year, I fully expect The Flash to keep heading down this path of success in what will hopefully be just the start of a long and happy run. Yes! One last pun to close things out on! Victory is mine! And that's going to do it for this episode of Unrepentant Geeking. I'll be out of town next week, and as a result, I probably won't be posting anything new. But when I come back, get ready, because the time of the end of the year best of list is upon us, and I have several to share with all of you. So, please look forward to that, and for Channel Awesome and Unrepentant Geeking, I'm Sean Cronenfeld, wishing you all happy holidays.